It wasn't by choice.
Start.
9:30, right on.
Is this by choice too? Yeah, I think so. But anyway, we're gonna go over a couple of things, just some
Good morning.
items
Hi.
that are a big discussion right now with the city. We're gonna just touch on those. If anybody has to leave early, please let us know and we'll get to you first.
Yes.
How many people are here in the fourth ward? All right,
How many from the sixth ward?
there you go. All right, some of the,
From everywhere.
Everywhere.
yeah. You know, did you want to say anything?
No, go ahead.
Okay. You know, there's some items that are coming up that, if you've been watching the city council meetings, we've got STEAM, which is a hot topic, and a lot of money. Thank you. We got the Egyptian Theater, they're coming to us with, need of money. And I'm sure we've all have been in the Egyptian Theater and we enjoy it, but, it's what we can afford. One thing I do want to point out real quick while everybody's here is, and this is throughout the city, it's our electrical supplier through ComEd. I got a couple phone calls and emails on that. And so I reached out, I had a meeting with the city manager Tuesday I think it was. And what it was, oh, here it is. No, that's not it. Here. And back in February, you know, we had that contract that Mr. Shabbat was nice enough to give us a $25 gift card and correct the problem that we were having. Their rates went up, so the city dropped the contract with them and went back to the ComEd rate, which the ComEd rate is 6.892 per kilowatt. If you can find something cheaper, you've got time now to do that. I did ask them to do a press release because I think a lot of times with the city of DeKalb, they lack information going out. You know, not everybody watches the council meetings. I mean, they're so enjoyable. So anyway, and do be careful on people coming along knocking at your door because they're gonna be coming out in droves, and it's a great way to start a scam. So.
Question here.
Yes.
Well, not a question. Today's Chronicle has an article on here about cities choose comment over aggregation.
Right. They ended up.
worked.
The way I was told, that they went back and just went back with ComEd that what we were at 2 years ago.
So, and that doesn't require a council vote?
It did vote.
Oh, it did vote.
Yeah, back in February.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is the city researching anything that can help us, or we're just all on our own?
Well, you know, and that's a good question. I don't know if they did or not, going back to February. I wasn't there to answer any, I couldn't ask any questions, but, I don't know, that's a good question, and that's, and unfortunately, we got a short time frame here too, according to this.
I talked to Tim Holdman from the city, and I asked him, will the city keep its options open as far as further aggregation contract potentials? So they're gonna monitor rates, and they can enter into a new contract, even if it's not at the set end period of this one. So,
Okay.
if something else comes along, they can enter into a new aggregation agreement, and people can opt out of it again, supposedly.
Okay.
So, that's what Tim Holdman told me, because I keep in touch with him about all this aggregation.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
But as far as you know, he's not working on it?
He says they're monitoring right now. They have an aggregation agreement only with the airport. For some reason, they got a good deal, which I thought was kind of strange. Just the airport is covered under an aggregation agreement, which it really only affects the city. The rest of us are not covered by it. I'm not sure if the company was not willing to offer its rate for the entire city. It just seems kind of odd. So.
Well, you know, and just thinking about it, that could come along with federal rate, you know, because of being an airport.
Right, right.
So that could be, I'm not saying it is.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, anybody have to leave early that's got a question or anything like that?
I have to leave a little early, but I don't have a question for you.
All right.
And I'm not even in
your ward.
I know.
I'm visual.
You're gonna have to stand outside the door.
I wondered whether I had to wear a button.
Yeah.
Alderman Fagan touched it. Quick question, what do the schools do? Do we know, for electricity and or the university?
Not a clue.
All right.
Alderman
negotiate.
Fagan touched on some of the big topics, some other things that are coming around that not many of us are aware of are parking regulations. So work in process before we took office, the city started looking at, well, we've got all these different parking restrictions that are very hard to follow, maintain, track, enforce, et cetera, et cetera. So I attended a meeting before the election, and then one right after the election where we got updates on these parking restrictions. And what we found is that today's staff aren't aware of the history of why some of these parking regulations are in place. So where it's great to try to simplify the code, simplify the number of areas and the time frame that people are restricted to park there, there's particular reasons why in some areas they are different. So I just wanted to bring that out to everyone's attention, that those meetings will take place for each ward. So we're going to have them again coming up, so.
Yeah, I live over in the 5th Ward, and I was one that initiated that study because I wrote 2 years before the study to ask why park. I live over in Thornburg, so Park Avenue, and my parents live in Mill Avenue. We had the parking garage for Northern's, people that don't want to pay for the parking sticker. My question was really simple. I mean, we have very narrow roads, parking every day. I said, why can't we have no parking all the time, like during the day, like Fox Hollow? You know, Fox Hollow is on the other side of the College of Business, by the way. Because when they built the College of Business, they started having a lot of traffic.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Did you go to Kate? Because Kate's in your council.
No, this was predated her.
All right, but what I'm saying, Kate just had it.
No, I know, but I'm saying the reason they delayed it is because John, Ray, and Anne Marie didn't want to upset President Baker. That's the story.
Yeah.
And so now, you're saying it's good that they're going back to understand, but
Yeah.
that was the story is, they didn't want to do anything to upset Northern. And the same thing is if you go back in time, for a while they had Garden Grove, no parking.
Yeah. I used to live up there. I lived on Augusta Avenue.
Yeah.
And they had no parking. I don't think you could park on the street till 7 o'clock.
Yeah, it's nuts, but that's the history. So
Right.
it came up and then they said, oh, we have to do a city-wide study.
Right.
Parking. And then, went up, it took 2 years, two and a half years, or 3 years. And then they came out, oh, look at this, we finally came up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as people may know, when it did come to happen, I don't know the history. John Laskowski was running the process, and he's now left the city. So do you have any status on what the records are? Because we had some discussions actually in Patrick's old street, I think Bar Boulevard. Again, it's the 5th Ward, but is an accident waiting to happen at the ball fields there. And to
It's
have
on
parking.
both sides, isn't it?
It's on both sides, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, you can't drive 2 cars.
It's, I just fear that some kid's gonna run out between.
Yeah.
It's just not a safe situation.
I agree.
But anyway, do we know what the status of the of the work that had been done on this, or as we too often see from this city, there's no knowledge management, there's no institutional knowledge, or at least that transfer is awkwardly caduced, as we recently saw that we couldn't locate the agreement by which Kish Hospital hooked up to our utilities. Anyway, and then the other question is status on off-street parking too. I know there were some initial discussions that I think you were involved in.
From the meeting I attended at council chambers with Alderman Baker at the time, it appeared that Mr. Laskowski and his team had pretty complete information. I've not had an opportunity to review it all, but I would believe that those succeeding Mr. Laskowski or his team would be able to carry that information forward. But I think that it will be key because all of these people are relatively new to the city. The important part will be the public and property owners and business owners being involved in this process, because whereas the city, I commend them on trying to be more efficient and not having all these different zones to enforce, at the same time, there are particular reasons for them. And to your comment, it's a discussion that I've been having with folks in the 6th Ward. Parking on the streets of the city of DeKalb is a privilege. It's not a right. So at the end of the day, we've got some issues we'll be talking about. North Annie Glidden Road corridor and other areas where we have insufficient parking for particular properties, so properties are leveraging our streets, making our streets more unsafe, making it harder for our public safety people to keep everyone safe. So we've got to take a look at how that has not worked, because I'm convinced it has not worked. And at a time when we're pretty stretched for revenue, Alderman Baker is one that kept bringing up, I think, vehicle stickers. Well, I think vehicle stickers is not what I'm talking about, but at the end of the day, perhaps there should be a collaboration and permits available so that we can get to some of these safety
Well, I think
issues.
there are permits for the permit program, because if you go up to Hillcrest, on the other side of Normal Road or somewhere around those neighborhoods, you actually can see some street signs that says permit.
Right.
But what I was gonna, two things, and hopefully the city of NIU won't start doing stuff in the background. Normal Road, when they decided to put in the bus cutoff, they decided to bypass normal review processes and let the city staff and NIU do it, and everybody was told that was quite a stupid idea. And it only took a couple weeks before, the first day it was a massive traffic jam. But the other thing I had mentioned at the 5th Ward meeting, and Jerry was there, was John and Doug Baker, who's no longer here, yay. They used to have.
You got 2 weeks.
He's still here for a couple weeks.
You got 2 weeks.
They used to,
It's 600,000.
they started, they started these community meetings that they used to do over at the Fagan's house at 5 o'clock, so they could serve cocktails, alcohol and food paid by NIU Foundation. And senior city staff were there, and all the tops NIU staff. No meeting agendas, no notes. They don't keep notes. I forward for them. Oh no, we don't keep any notes. No follow-up discussions. And so after, when I talk about it at the Board of Trustees, and now at the DeKalb Police Station at 7 o'clock in the morning, if you're gonna have these types of meetings, you really should open them up to the public, because a lot of the decisions on spending have been done in these meetings, and it's amazing, like University Village, NIU had those highly paid consultants meet with the University Village, talk to HUD, this campus cinema theater, they were over there with Doug Roberts. There's all these deals that have been done in the background in the past, and I'm very happy to see the new council taking a more active role.
Yeah, if I could say something about that, we are very, very careful on this, okay? The other night when we walked out from council meeting, I was out there talking to Kate, she was waiting for a ride, and I was standing next to her, so, wait till her husband picked her up. Was it you that came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Said
came out,
hi, good night.
and we were talking about the weather, and then the minute, and then, we're very, very careful about that now. The last thing I wanna do is put my name or anybody else's on the council in the paper about questioning on how we run our meetings. And with that said, it's very difficult, to try to get an idea across, but you gotta do it in public, and I agree with you. You had a question?
I actually just wanted to ask, getting back to the street parking with apartment complexes or whatever, is that an issue of permitting or something where when it was constructed that they just weren't allowing for enough parking? I mean, are places being built with insufficient parking for the number of units or the number of residents that they're expecting?
Right. Right, that's where you come in with the variance on the codes, when people build homes, or build apartment complexes, or I think you saw some of that with Cornerstone project. How many units are in those apartments and how many parking places are for those units? And that has to go through the zoning board, and they have to do the research, and then they do the recommendation to the council, and then it'll be ultimately our decision to do that, to make any changes.
So in the past, have they just been ignoring that component of any kind of a zoning variance, or is it just that density is just higher than expected with just more people living in the
hang on for a
units?
second, because I live by the college area, okay? So, I mean, you've got people that will violate the codes,
Oh, yeah.
okay? You might have, we've run into it before. I mean, we might have somebody that might have, 10, 12 people living in a house, and it might be cousins, uncles, aunts, the homeowner, and we don't know to go after them until somebody complains. Because we have no knowledge of that. Okay, and then once they do, then we can come in and correct the codes or do whatever not correct the codes, but correct the situation, right?
Yeah.
And it's a long process
Yeah.
according to the crime-free housing, it is like,
You know
it's
what?
internal, it's a
Right.
tough process.
And the reason why that is, and I don't like the long progress, but these people have rights,
Sure.
okay? And we can't violate somebody's rights. Unfortunately, it takes time.
So, I mean, Jim would be the local expert in this, but from a city code perspective, there's three different ideas that are germane. Number one is, what I initially thought we were talking about was street parking, as Mike referred to, it's a privilege, not a right. Secondly, we have off-street parking, which is a subsection of the UDO, which has requirements depending on the type of business that you have, how many parking spaces you have required. To your point, it has not always historically been, if the powers that be wanted a project to be done, it got done regardless of whether the parking was there. In all honesty, as somebody who's filed the council for 10 years, most recently and historically before that, a few decades back, the last 10 years, the council, pretty much every project, I remember, the mosque project was a deep concern because that was a residential area. But the council, bent over backwards to try to make sure it happened, but within a reasonable combination. The codes for the campus area historically were quite different. There was a higher density that was allowed. I mean, it almost became a second-class citizenry. And so, but I think what I read the tea leaves is the direction is to kind of unify the city in that regard. But then the third area, which is more germane to Cornerstone, is an exemption in the downtown area. So Pappas, to his credit, partially because he was getting city monies, went above and beyond what normally would be required because you're in the downtown, the CBD, the Central Business District. You're essentially exempt from having to require to have any parking. Which is,
Then it was all voted on, and it was up to the council. They could have shut it down. They voted on it, and it's done.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a reasonable combination. You went above and beyond, purchased that building to make additional parking is fantastic. I wish all the landlords downtown were that proactive in trying to make that happen. But anyway, Jim would be the expert on this topic, but it's three different areas that's, I thought, important.
Do you want to keep on this or should we move on?
Yeah, let's move
We
on.
can move on.
Yeah,
I wanted to get back to Mr. Van Buren's comment though, and to say, we have got to learn from those experiences of failed governance to know how to better govern into the future. So, I believe you know how I feel about those situations, so please know that it will be everything that I do, and certainly what I've heard from Alderman Fagan thus far, is to keep our things that relate to the public in public.
On the topic of keeping things in public, I do wanna remind, I know you both are new to the council, but it takes just 2 aldermen to get an item on the agenda. So if you think something is worthy of discussion, all you have to do is have two of you request it be a discussion item on the agenda. Committee of the whole meetings, I'm very happy with the new format that we're doing for special topics. I think it's a great idea to fully vet some of these items that have been coming up. On the topic of committee of the whole, and I brought this to the attention of the mayor, it would be very nice if speakers had an opportunity to speak, and I noticed he did it this last meeting, hopefully it'll be a trend at the beginning and at the end. Because if you leave it to people at the end to speak, decisions have been formulated already and public comment is simply an afterthought at that point. So if we can allow the public more input to committee of the whole, since no decision is technically being made, it's discussion, that would be very helpful.
Okay, can I just stop
Sure.
for a second on that and agree with you, and also want to point out that during city council meetings, we like to keep the comments at 3 minutes, so we're not there all night.
Right.
Right, and it's out of respect for everybody. And the COWs, we don't have a 3-minute limit, and if you notice with Mac the other night, you know, it's because this is a total discussion, it's
Right,
not coming
right,
out,
right.
but that's what we're trying to do.
Workshop.
Yeah, exactly, right, public input on that. Can I touch upon city hiring, because Dave Jacobson brought this to the attention of everybody last week. And there are 2 positions, I looked at the 2 positions that he brought up that are on the City of DeKalb website. We have a building inspector or some sort of building person that's being paid, gonna be paid over $110,000 a year. Is this a new position, also a payroll clerk or something that's gonna get $60,000
Right.
a year? And I know my big point is, he wants to bring this up for a discussion item about hiring. I think it's a great idea, and I hope that goes forward, so.
I've got the answers.
You do, all right.
Not
Did
the
I
world
eat-
hunger or anything else, but I got the
I
answer to
emailed
those
you
2
on this.
positions. Okay, those are actually 2 positions that one was vacated back in November of last year, and the other one was vacated in January. Okay, now, the explanation, I went to Human Resources and I said, hey, I wanna know this information, I wanna know, are they new positions, are they replacement? By the way, are we paying the same amount of the money that we paid the other 2? Okay, the answer is, yes, it's replacement, and yes, they're paying the same amount. Now, I wanna double check on that, all right?
Right.
The confusing part is this, hang on, and I'm trying to, the chief building official,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
new
that's-
position,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, it comes from reclassification of the position of long-range planner,
So Derek Highland's old position?
Yes.
Okay.
okay? So that's that position.
Which was a fake position, because he was basically pushed out as principal planner, and they had to make that position
Right.
just for him to have a temporary space.
You know, and let's talk about hiring and everything. Now, it's been discussed on, because especially with Cornerstone and with TIF and people putting money into town, in the downtown area with the TIF money and more, hopefully, more business, more people coming in and out, you know, and more people downtown.
When we move down.
That
You okay?
we're running
Yes, you
into,
wanna say that?
Bessie,
Get Bessie to sit down.
Bessie, you're interrupting us. No, it's,
My mother told me if I stood, I'd get taller.
one thing that I liked on what was discussed was, that I heard, because there's gonna be more cars, more parking, situations downtown DeKalb. We've not really replaced anybody to take care of parking violations downtown, okay? I don't know, and I started thinking about it, when's the last time I saw anybody out giving parking tickets downtown for over 2 hours?
Right, like when Roger retired.
Roger, I mean, when Roger retired, I don't remember seeing anybody else out there, right? Have you?
No.
Has anyone got a parking ticket recently?
Okay.
Not
I
that you
did.
would violate the.
I did.
Well, by the, yeah,
At
overtime parking?
it was 2 in the morning.
All right, that's by the police department. Okay, but what was brought up is we do have to get someone out there to to take care of that, right? Especially with this cornerstone, with everybody downtown, whatever. They're talking about it using part-time and making sure that the tickets that are issued are going to make sure that they're gonna pay for that person to take care of that. All right, so it's not gonna be paying out $30,000 in 2 part-times and only bringing in 15. So that was a positive note that I heard.
We don't have to pay a ticket writer $23 an hour. So,
Right,
And I
right.
see some of these part-time positions and they pay 20-something. I'm like,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah.
Part of the reasoning about not doing a lot of ticketing in downtown was to perpetuate a more business-friendly atmosphere. You know, so the public wasn't,
Let's
you know,
talk,
and then as far as Cornerstone and the impact that'll
Yeah.
have, that should provide off-street parking, so
Right.
it does not impact. That's the whole reason for
all right.
PUDs and.
All right, let's talk about business friendly, because I think this is a term that we've all used when we were running, okay? Because we do wanna be business friendly. Business friendly, my definition of it is, you wanna come in and get an addition onto your house. And it should not take you 3 to 4 weeks to get a permit, okay? Now, going back, because people go back, don't forget, you gotta be business friendly, all right, but I'm not gonna go over and let the town go crazy. And, you know, it's not fair to those people that wanna come downtown and shop, come to a restaurant, and have some employee parking there for 8 hours, taking a spot.
Yeah.
You can't keep everybody happy.
And historically, business friendly has come to mean, well, don't show any of that tough love to autos. Don't hold Pretanos accountable for their property. So I think we overdo it with being business friendly when we don't enforce just basic safety code violations in businesses. That goes beyond business friendly.
That's favoritism,
Yeah.
and that's been a problem.
It's a huge problem.
Yes.
So another example, so the Starbucks lot, for example. So they misidentified how much off-street parking would be available. So the way the code's written, it's based on the accumulation of the various businesses that are there. When you have one business, they had enough parking. But by the time you would, hopefully someday again, have 6 businesses, particularly depending on types of businesses, they had insufficient parking. So that was business friendly to the property owner. However, when recently a business examined the potential of moving there, they were advised by some of the existing tenants, you don't wanna come here, there's insufficient parking. So as a result, the retail business decided not to locate there. So business friendly, you know, I think is too much of a coded word. And to Mike's point, I think we really have to, well, to everybody's point, you have to be fair across the board. There's a reason these codes and standards exist. If not, maybe they should be, you know, the specific ones should be gotten rid of. But we have to have long-range fairness in mind as opposed to just solving one person's problem.
I was just gonna say, you know, you look at, again, the Cornerstone project, I don't understand why the city's even paid any money towards a study on taking one of our lanes of traffic to be able to put outside.
Can I answer that? Can I answer that? Okay, I am not, what the city wanted to do, okay, they wanna come in and take out that right-hand lane and turn it into a nice open walkway, all right? I'm not gonna put my name on that. I mean, I mean, because I don't want my name used in vain every time somebody drives.
The Fagan lane.
You know, they can use it any other time, but anyway, what that was, is that was gonna be a shot down no, okay? And an hour before the meeting, Papa said, hey, I'll give $25,000 for that. Okay, now there's 2 reports on this now. There's the first one and the second one. Okay, we said, all right, well, what I wanted the report, all right, and it only cost us $9,000. Only $9,000 is a lot of money, but it's a lot cheaper than the 32,000. It's 32,000. If we could get that, and by the way, that report had to be done because you're connecting onto the state highway, right? So we just couldn't come up with an engineer. I would like to see that sidewalk brought out a couple extra feet. And looking at that, it looks like you can, but you're looking at two guys that are not gonna let that lane close down. But, and we weren't gonna spend the $32,000 to get that extra 2 feet, 2 or 3 feet. Now, $9,000 was pretty cheap, I thought. Yes?
On the First Street, potential lane closure there, is there a way, because right now on the sidewalk are the power poles, whatever wires are carrying over above, and that is constricting it.
Right.
Admittedly, foot traffic is way too close to vehicular traffic on that road. Is there a way, maybe one part of the solution would be to put some kind of a heavy-duty gate or perimeter wall or something between the sidewalk and the street?
And that's something that has to be taken a look at. We have to find out on how far we can go into that First Street, and that's been brought up, and that's a logical
Because
explanation on it.
that would greatly increase not only the overall safety, but the sense of safety for the pedestrians.
Right, I mean, you look at some of these corners, like the corner of where Old Erie's is. Okay, when you go walk around that area, that's tight.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's impossible for a handicapped person because you got to take a sharp left.
Right.
And it's entirely because of the city being business friendly.
Right.
He overbuilt. Okay, so the outdoor cafe is built on leased property. It's city owned still, but they have a 20-year annual renewable lease. The parameters of that lot, of the space, are recorded with the county. The part of the deal was they're responsible for the property taxes, even though it's city owned. Because the proprietor overbuilt by 2 feet, which is a significant amount, made it 2 feet wider than it should have been, requiring this kind of left turn jigging. It was put up for a former city employee who was terminated and had a relationship with the the Chamber of Commerce person, and there was encouragement to look the other way. So how do we go about rectifying these things?
Well, we pray not to let that happen again. Okay, and it's really easy for me to say that, and it's hard for you to accept that.
Yeah.
But I can't answer for something that happened 2, 3, 4 years ago.
But this is an annual lease. It shouldn't be renewed until it's rectified. So we have to have we have a mayor who, to his credit, is talking about a new day.
Right.
And I have nothing but the respect for the two of you. I am concerned about, Omaha's and your admission that the three of you met in the parking lot, clearly by talking about the weather, which is a major topic in DeKalb, that you were violating. But I'll pretend I didn't hear that. And but when we get to the next topic, I'd love to hear your individual ideas in terms of how to build a coalition of civic-minded, do the right thing aldermen, so that we can get a core moving things along. But I don't want to change topics if that topic's still.
Another thing that happened when they built the outdoor seating for O'Leary's, they put a street sign right in the sidewalk, so it was not wheelchair accessible. So I called the city, and 2 days later it was conveniently moved, so now there was a sidewalk.
Yeah, those things should be well thought out before you do something,
Right.
And I don't know about you folks, but wherever I have worked for someone, if I screwed up, it was, you get consequences.
Right.
So
And you take responsibility.
you have to.
Yeah.
Just because you're a government employee doesn't mean you're exempt from it.
Plus that costs taxpayer money, to pay everybody to put it in and to take it out, so not only consequences.
Well, they had nothing else to do.
Right.
And I think to Bill's point, to follow up on, the O'Leary situation, probably the case for one or two, or I don't know how many more workshops, just to look at all of those arrangements downtown as we look to this cornerstone investment downtown. And there's other recommendations for projects with STEAM, et cetera, downtown. We need to be aware of all of these situations or agreements or whatnot more comprehensively as we make other decisions, policy decisions regarding that type of process.
I was just gonna say, because the handicap was brought up about the sidewalk, and my mom has an organization that raises money and they get other leaders. And she has quite a few of those that are handicapped. And now my mom's been handicapped because she fell down the basement stairs, but they have, when you go looking downtown, there's really not that much handicap parking anywhere near anything. You know, is there any way to, you know, you go out to the stores and stuff and there's close by handicap parking, but, you know, downtown DeKalb, it's very difficult.
I've suggested to Anne Marie for 2.5 years, as long as that nice lady's been here, for valet parking. Now, valet parking accesses and uses your parking lots behind the old buildings. So if one of you guys wanna make a motion to have valet parking, if, you won't believe what it does, because when I lived in Chicago, I always went to valet parking and then took a cab. Well, you don't have to take a cab because you can't get one, but what do you think of that?
I like the idea as long as we can avoid the liability, but if you contract.
That's what insurance is for. That's what insurance is for. And not only that, but the people that do this, they do it for free. They do it for tips. There's no wages.
Right, you're talking about liability, and I've insured those in Chicago. And I might be able to get a couple contracts.
Please do.
But you've gotta remember, when the liability comes from the city, we are exempt to a certain point. But we are gonna be added on to their policy.
That'll save downtown, by the way. I mean, it won't save it, but it'll help downtown.
I like that idea. Two other relevant things, since we're talking about handicap accessibility downtown, is number one, when the city has special use permits for the Van Buren Plaza, there are 3 handicapped spaces that are, and that really is the central allotment of handicapped spaces that are no longer available to the public during those events. They should be illegal anyway because they're not on level ground, which the ADA requires. But way back when, I was working with Ellen, when she was here, on potential replacement for that. Norieko had just become alderman, and she was part of this as well. And there was discussion about creating some handicap spaces on level ground, outside the lot. But essentially, the city is, I think, denying public, equal access to these so-called community events every time they issue a permit and close the lot for everything like the farmer's market. So that's point one. Number two, I like Jim's idea. And I think it's creative. I'm not gonna take credit for this idea, but in meeting with Mr. Pappas about where he sees downtown going subsequent to that project, his recommendation was for the city to purchase the properties on the north side of Locust, essentially 3 buildings there, including I think the law office, Gavin Wilson's office, and one other office, and basically tear those down and open up the parking structures, the city's parking lots to the north of Locust Street. So I don't know if that's prudent or not, but I'm not taking credit for the idea, but I'll communicate to this group that he had that idea. I thought it was interesting. And also,
There's an old saying, you're never too thin, too rich, or have enough parking. Okay? And that's so true.
And can we, and thank you for all about the parking and everything, I appreciate that, but did you have something, Bessie, before?
No, I have another question.
I'd like to open it up to if anybody's got something else other than the parking. You know, you've been so patient.
No, I'm just concerned about Fairview Drive and the traffic and the trucks out there and the kids playing soccer.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the the answer is if there can be, cameras put up somewhere. I know that the police have got their hands full in other areas.
Right.
But, you know,
I mean, like, there's no loss out to Taylor on weekends?
so.
Yeah.
But, no,
Well,
I-
it feels that way, I'm not saying it is, but,
Can we quote you?
no. And I want an erase on it.
Edit.
No, and I can't say what services that we have or have not, but that's anyway, but going back to, Fairview. Let's talk about the trucks. They're not supposed to be going up and down there.
Well,
So no truck
the
route.
things
Right.
that
Always
we
has
heard,
to.
Saw one yesterday.
Right.
a
Yeah.
lot of it is GPS routes them that way. Is there a way that the city can let the GPS services know that?
Yeah, that is way over my head on that, I think, the answer, but to going back to the trucks, and then we'll get it back to the kids on the street and what have you. The trucks, our number one problem down Fairview, Gurler, Harvester, First Street, Fourth Street, and the tollway is signage. How many times have you, I saw it was not even 30 days ago, I saw a truck, a semi, right in front of Fairview Cemetery on First Street with its axles of the trailer down in the ditch because he was trying to turn around.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear that all the time, I live
Yeah,
right back there.
well, yeah, you're right there in that corner.
I hear
And- Right,
Serious.
and this hasn't been brought up before, and nothing's been done on it, because, really?
Oh, yeah.
But what I'm just saying is, I think we need more signage. I know that, you know, the people are so stuck on the GPS that they end up on a road that they shouldn't be on. I mean, that's true. But I think with more signage,
Big signs.
you know, the best sign I ever
Flashing sign.
saw, I was out in Nebraska, made the wrong turn, it says, "Are you lost?" This way down Route 80. I mean, that was a great sign. So, what about the kids on, you know, playing soccer? You know, you're very fortunate you got off-street parking there for
So-
that.
But, you know, it's gonna take one little kid and chasing one ball, and I mean, we watch and people are passing each
60
other
mile an
out
hour
there,
traffic.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
you know, I'll tell you what, remember Jim Rhodes, the
So-
policeman? He loved Fairview. I mean, because, and I will talk to the chief about this, because a lot of times I think the police kinda ignore it a little bit because they're not familiar with the weight restrictions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And maybe, I'll talk to Gene about that and see what his
Yeah,
idea
the road.
is.
Do they even have a-
Because that's not a truck road, you know?
No, it's not.
No, there's a sign that clearly
It's
says.
posted, yeah.
Right.
6,000 pounds.
It's a little small sign,
But, you know, what you're talking about is similar to Bard Boulevard, not as bad for when there was games out there. But I mean, yeah, I know what you mean, because I mean, my kids went out there and were soccer games, and you saw that, and you got all those cars parked across the street. And then you got the brothers and sisters that are playing out there, yeah.
So I talked to Gene about it a couple years ago, and I can appreciate where he's at. I mean, there are people robbing and killing and everything in other parts of town that he can't
Yeah.
expect somebody to be out there 24/7, you know.
No,
that-
but, you know, Mrs. Francie, the thing is, the kids aren't out there 24/7.
so-
I mean, it's Saturday at quarter
But the
after 10.
speakers are, I mean, we
Yeah.
watch people passing and, you know, it's crazy.
Well, it's the
That's-
box plant traffic, you know, in the mornings too, like
Yeah.
6:30 in the morning, and they're all late. And then semis and,
I got the same problem when I pull out from my subdivision on Gurley Road. I mean, I understand.
Due to my career, which you'll hear me start driving across the city, is the use of cameras. And
Well,
very
that's what I
economical
wondered.
that we could position in the public way, keeping it out of viewing of private property, but keep the view in the public way, that we would be able to obtain those license plates very, very affordably, very inexpensively, where the revenue off of enforcement would pay for cameras, 10 times over at least. So I think we have areas that, like Fairview, where that should be
And
strongly
there's
considered.
signs that there's a walking area in a couple spots, and people, some of them obey and allow people to walk across.
Most don't.
And,
Right.
exactly,
Most
exactly.
do not, they
Well,
just
something-
whiz right on by.
So, but I mean, nobody knows for sure what they're supposed to do, and that again is not a good situation.
There again, you're looking at signage.
Yeah.
I think something that, I've talked to somebody about this before, but I think something that's relatively affordable is when you come off of Fourth and when you come off of First on Fairview, if you have a center, you have a concrete in the center.
Like an island.
So
Roundabout.
You go, well, not specifically roundabout, but where you have it on, you divide it off on both sides, in other words, so that a truck isn't gonna turn onto that particular, if there's a.
Boulevard.
Yeah, I mean, well, not that it goes all the way down, it's just in the front and in both sides. And so you come around on both sides as an automobile easily, but a truck's gonna say, I can't get in there, there's no way. I mean, I'm not gonna, you're not allowed to.
Yeah, they'll still try, you know that.
They'll try, but they certainly won't, I mean, they won't, it'll give them the thing, it'll give them pause. And by the way, the sign that says, no trucks allowed, right in the center of that, in that.
You know, it should say well before that, hopefully.
Yeah, well before that, but at that point, they're just going, this doesn't look right at all, I can't do this.
But in that situation, then you get into the whole, you know, is that gonna be an issue for the plow drivers in the wintertime when we have, you know, 14 inches of snow?
Yeah, I mean, but
on occasion?
I've just seen
Are
it
they gonna
work.
be running into it?
I've seen it work in other areas where
Yeah.
people had that same problem. And the whole problem is that Fairview has changed over the years from being, you know, was out of the town, and then now it's in the middle of town, and hard to make that change. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think started looking at, and I went back 4 years before I was elected and saw some of the comments that were made and some of the hot points, and one of them was the signage down here. And I've noticed that in the last 4 years, nothing's been done.
Relative to this topic, I believe it was something that our quote-unquote long-range planner was engaged in before he left our employ for greener pastures. Was the master plan. And one of the things that I've been concerned about for a long time is our failures, and maybe Mr. Mason has insights on this, as to how our roadway alternatives are proactively developed. So I'm very concerned about Peace Road as a north-south corridor, particularly in wintertime, particularly when there are accidents. What's your alternative? You know, how do you adapt to something else? And we've, I thought, gone too far along waiting for the developer community to propose the projects to make things happen and then accommodating them, as opposed to perhaps proactively developing the alternative highways and byways that we really need to have a city that's conveniently traversed. And then encouraging people, much like good parking ordinances, which are supposed to be rotating people, you know, communicate to the public what your expectations are. But I think there was an initiative in the 2005, 2007 Renew DeKalb to get trucks off the Route 38. Whether it succeeded or not, I don't necessarily think we did, but I think those were all, it's a wonderful project, but we don't have an official roads engineer at this point. So I just shudder to think what the outsourced engineering costs on something like that would be.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think we should outsource it, or do you think we should add an engineer on full-time city employee and pay pension and benefits?
I think there's certain.
No, I mean that's a legit question.
But certain positions, I think, more than pay for themselves. If we could have 3 Mark Thorsons, I am sure that we would pay for themselves in terms of reduced labor. I think it's absolutely ludicrous that we have a level of staffing, and this is way off topic, but.
We wanna see
we'll
it.
get
I know, but you asked me about staffing, so,
I'm talking about engineering, that's what I,
but,
yeah.
anyway, I'll make it brief. We have a level of staffing known as management analyst, which, if they actually were doing analysis, I put in a FOIA request and no documents produced that actually indicated any of them were doing any analysis. You know, they're just glorified administrative assistants. So, the engineering side, there's unique qualifications, and IDOT requires a certified engineer to produce certain studies. So I think that one's a no-brainer. I think in general, you guys should be vigilant on all the outsourcing that's being done, and that there should be an analysis done. It probably costs us $72,000.
Yeah, you're asking for a study, right? Well, we're not gonna do that. What I'm just saying, I'm coming out and saying.
I'm saying for certain critical positions, like an engineer, where you have to, or an architect, or certain things, I'm not saying that we need a full-time architect, but there are certain things that I respect, that there's a science behind it. And I think we went backwards by having a glorified project manager in a road engineering position. Now, that may be a temporary hire, I don't know what to say.
All right, so I'm gonna take that as a yes, full-time engineer.
Full-time engineer, road engineer,
Employed.
absolutely,
Okay,
yes, employed.
how does everybody else feel about that?
No,
Absolutely.
Yes.
no.
And maybe eliminate something else to pay for it, so.
We're one subject at a
Right.
time, right?
Yeah.
You know?
I like to keep things even.
I don't wanna veer off here. Okay, so that's, thank you.
Absolutely.
You wanna know why?
Sure.
You don't hire anybody that you have to pay for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
A fireman gets retired at 52, and you gotta pay him $4.5 million if he lives to 80.
That whole policy needs to be looked at, too,
Well,
I agree.
but if you're gonna hire somebody, you gotta give them pension. So you go privatize, and there's all kinds of ways to do it.
Bessie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions which may morph into other things too. One has to do with better utilization of the various boards and commissions in the city, and how those positions are filled, and how the specific boards or commissions are utilized, hopefully in lieu of any kinds of studies. Because if you just look in this room here, many of the people who have been active and kind of the watchdogs, there's more than enough talent right here in this room to rectify certain situations and to bring forth information. So some discussion maybe along that area. And the other question is the city manager's allotment of being able to expend up to a certain amount of money.
Spending authority.
Spending authority.
The $20,000.
$20,000.
That
Can
was.
we lower that?
That went to zero.
Well, no, wait, now I'll answer that real quick.
That was never meant to be, oh, let's do this and let's do that, and we don't have to tell council. That was meant for emergency purposes, like, when there's a massive flood.
Right,
And you
right.
absolutely need to get a generator and you.
That's a policy.
That
Right.
was, and it morphs into, and just right recently with this FOIA stuff.
All right,
Where they went and
right.
bought, and that not only went ahead and hired some, or bought a service or whatever they did. They bought a software thing for the demo website
FOIA
that we
portal.
had. Portal.
$10,000.
But it changed a policy. So that is way far overstepping, and we're getting poorer and poorer by the day. They
Right.
gotta cut that woman off.
All right, let me address that without getting into FOIA, because that's a different subject.
Yeah, no,
And it's
but
a
it's
different
just-
time, and
It's
if
the
you notice, I
expenditure.
said, hey, we're gonna extend that COW. Going back to that $20,000, you are absolutely right. When you see people coming up, directors are saying, hey, we can do this we can split it up and do it for under the $20,000, and
Right.
that
Parsing
just burns me,
Yeah.
okay? Now, I don't think we should go down to zero, because, I remember years ago in a town that was very close to this town, that the mayor had to okay every pencil and paper that was purchased. I don't wanna get into that situation, alright? But you're absolutely right, because you could take a $30,000 expenditure, put it over 2 years,
Yeah.
okay? And, we don't wanna see the cat skinned here, at all. And it does have to look at, and getting back, you wanna answer about the committees?
Sure, and certainly I was one that brought up, I can't recall when the meeting was, but I brought out to the Finance Advisory Committee the notion of city manager spending authority. I thought it should be discussed and lowered to $10,000. Only one other committee member was interested in the discussion at the time. So I think there's been efforts to try and to rationalize why. Bessie, to your point, it's just to show the history of this should be for emergencies. Here's what it was used for. This is why we have to lower it to 10,000 or whatever that amount is.
It takes two of you to get that on the agenda.
Back to the committees, thus far, I don't know if it's been announced publicly, I'm the liaison to the Finance Advisory Committee.
Good.
So the notion would be that things like the TIF phase out, the capital development plan, the streets plan, all of those things should circulate through the Finance Advisory Committee first, and then, much like Plan Commission, anyone else, make a recommendation to the City Council on what are these items that we need to address. City manager spending limit, hiring freeze. We again, as a Finance Advisory Committee, can plainly see that our expenses far and away outpace our revenue. So our job and the public's job will be how to prioritize a finite amount of revenue and stop artificially raising revenue to meet expenses that are living within our means.
Just two things. First is, I don't know what the spending authority says, but you could have the clause like emergency, public defined emergencies. But the other, when you brought up about the TIF phase out, I brought this up at the 5th Ward meeting. I forwarded Ray's calendars, Embry's calendars, Dean's calendars. There have been so many phase out meetings, 25 or 30. And it's never been discussed at City Council what they've been talking about. So I mean, and so then they come and like, well, Jacobson did a really good job about the steam center. Then the city staff comes in and says, oh, it's an emergency, we need to hurry up and spend the money. Jacobson rightly said, no, you just have to start the project before the end of the TIF phase out. You should start asking for, hopefully you guys will ask for a briefing from what all these meetings.
If you notice, when we're talking about Kishwaukee, new facility and, that meeting that we had, but, I mean,
Oh, sure.
that meeting, it was also brought up about TIF funding and where we're at with TIF. Alright. Now, that is, between a couple of us, they're getting pressured to get this done, and it's gotta be done. Because, I mean, we're running out of time, but we wanna be there. Now, we were at the TIF where what was that called when they had that meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning with the county and you were on the committee.
TIF review.
That's a TIF review.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, what I didn't care for that was there was not, I don't think there was proper representation from the city on that.
And some of the taxing bodies, there were 3 or 4 taxing bodies missing.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think
And the finance director wasn't there.
Yeah, well, you gotta call, yeah, that was.
As Bessie pointed out, the attorney, the TIF attorney wasn't there.
Was the school board there?
School board was there. Kish College was there. To the TIF issue, we had a wonderful series, I believe 3 wards, 3, 4, and 5, had wonderful community attended meetings with wonderful ideas for the TIF. Ellen, when she was still with the employee of the city, helped to run these meetings. Shortly thereafter, she was gone, and it took 2 months for the minutes from those meetings to hit the board. The current city manager has indicated that sometimes toward the end of 2017, which will be a full year later, those discussions will be renewed. And I would like to know if you have an opinion on this and if we can move those discussions up. I realize we're going to a budget cycle, and maybe it's impossible to bring it forward any sooner than that.
And-
I mean, here we are at the half a year point anyway.
To dovetail on that, the crux of those meetings, because I attended all three, was that the public who was there, as they were discussing, said, oh yeah, what about this and what about that? The staff was trying to push, putting lipstick on a pig type of a thing and fixing up a few houses here and there. But the discussion from the public said, what about infrastructure? Can the TIP dollars be used? And that was the main thrust of what many people were saying, which was really relatively ignored. Now, the FAC, are they gonna be allowed to meet by themselves without the hovering over of the staff, the entire staff there with them? They don't need the entire, the police chief, the fire chief, everybody under the sun there.
Are you talking about the COWs?
Finance Advisory Committee.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, why do you need all those people there where they're?
Because that's the way it's been run, and
Right,
they've done joint meetings.
Let's get the process going.
Exactly.
Right, and, that was kind of brought up to me by one of the people, it's like, these COWs, well, if it's, now maybe I shouldn't use the FOI, but let's say North Annie Glidden project, if we, what we're gonna be doing there.
That was a good-
Looking at, I mean, there's some departments that don't need to be there. You're absolutely right.
Well, not at the, FAC, you've got people, and there's people in this room who could probably be appointed to that, who know more about the budget than the city manager.
By the way, before you raise your hands and we get on that, there is a subject that on the 4th Ward, it's a hot subject right now, and it has to do with Heritage Ridge subdivision, okay? And, I just want, because we've got 25 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get to that.
Which one's Heritage Ridge?
This is the first, we've
On
got
the
3
west.
subdivisions off of Fairview. You got the one, the middle one, and then the one close to the 4th Street.
Is Heritage Ridge
Right,
on the other side of?
Heritage Ridge
First?
is over by the 1st Street. That's the first drive you come into going.
Intersection of First and Fairview.
Right.
Right.
The east
Right.
side of, west
Now,
side of the street.
now the thing is, and kick in any time if I miss something.
Okay.
It's been brought to our attention that, we've got 3 cul-de-sacs and the entranceway. And then we've also got the retention pond that's on the corner of First and Fairview, okay? Now, what's happened here is, that was supposed to happen, is on the people in Heritage Ridge were supposed to be, like in better words, assessed off their property taxes to take care of the city, to pay the city for maintaining everything.
A special service area number 3.
Yeah, SSA 3. So, what's happened is, and the director of streets came up and said, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna increase this because we haven't been collecting any money, we've been coming off of the surplus. And then I came to find out on Tuesday that half the subdivision, has been assessed, and the newer portion of the subdivision hasn't been.
Actually, 1/3 has, 2/3 have not.
It's, by the way, the 2/3, thank you, right?
Yeah, I talked to Mike Peddle about this.
Okay, so, that's screwed up, totally screwed up. The other thing is what the city says to maintain it. The city says it's $500 to mow all the lawn in the retention pond. 10 cuts, $50 a cut. They pay for that. And then they outsource to an independent contractor, landscaping company, they take care of the shrubbery in the middle. Now, I kind of did my math a little bit on this, because the same thing is happening out in your subdivision, okay? What I don't understand is they're popping us for, not us, but the subdivision, just shy of $400 a cul-de-sac. They wanna do about $1,500, so it's like $300 some dollars. So, but in your subdivision, it's less on those.
Because we have 17.
We got 17.
You have 17.
17
Right,
islands.
but I don't care if you got 4 or 17. They should be the same amount, shouldn't they?
Right.
Okay, now, going forward, we have to make sure that if, it has to be decided on what everybody wants to do with that subdivision. And Mark did a great job of reaching out to everyone, saying, hey, this is what's happening, okay? And did you do the whole subdivision or just your
Well,
street?
with it, Mike Peddle, he looked into it a few years ago, the previous alderman wouldn't even lift a finger to even
And
discuss
he's in,
this.
yeah, Mark's, he's in your subdivision.
Mike Peddle was in my
Yeah,
subdivision, so he's aware of anything subdivision related, I talked to him first. But we do have a surplus in this fund though,
Right.
and he still decided we're gonna add taxes to it this year.
Right.
I said, no, we should go a year without, because there's almost 2 years of funding, and really nothing has been done other than lawn mowing.
Right.
And my big deal was the fact that the 1/3, which I live in, has been paying for the whole
Mm-hmm.
subdivision, that we should get some money back or some sort of remedy, and they say, well, it was a coding error
By
on
the
the part of
county.
the county. And I said, the city, shouldn't they be monitoring where the revenues are coming from? Mike Peddle said, most cities don't bother to do that. That's ridiculous, they don't bother to see if there's a coding error or if people are being mistaxed, you know? You guys are the ones in the Finance Advisory Committee and City Council that approve the taxes every year in October, whatever the not assessment, but the taxes for the whole year, what they're gonna be for each particular individual, whatever. And no one bothered to look at that, so.
Which city person found the problem on the electrical aggregation?
Well, yeah, the
Wasn't
city
person
doesn't
either.
do oversight, and that's, if a citizen has to do what these $150,000 staff members are not doing, it's kind of ridiculous, you know?
I have a question.
There's no oversight.
On subdivisions, that we split the, assessment third, I mean, don't we do that for the citywide, you change you do it on splitting it up, you assess and raise the rate on a third, and then the next third, and then the next third, and then rotate, do you do that, I mean, do we do that through, or
I don't think we do.
we do it? We do it, then why the heck how did it happen that?
Yeah.
How did it happen that we did a third and then 2/3 didn't get assessed?
Because, well, I don't know if that's a county mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, the way they put up, but how it all started out with was the gentleman that started the subdivision. And as it pointed out, there was one signature on an agreement with the city on that, okay? Well, shake your head, but the thing is, you can't, it starts out, you only got one person.
Sure.
Okay, but like a lot of these associations, developments, neighborhoods, especially after '08, because I can attest to it in my neighborhood, I mean, nobody's doing anything about it, okay? Now, I'm not being taxed like you are because we don't have an agreement with that. I mean, there's two ways to solve this problem. One, form a homeowners association, break the agreement with the city.
Who has the right to break that agreement? When the recent SSA, the new SSA was approved, it required 50% plus one to say no to it, okay? That's how they put it into place. To rescind this, and that's a question I have for you guys, is, because I talked to several people in my subdivision who asked about the possibility of rescinding the SSA. Is there a method to do that?
You know what? I'll tell you what, you've got an alderman that'll bring that up. And if somebody wants, and this is how I would present it to the city, all right? It's less work we have to do, they take it over, or 51%, and let's vote on it, and let them take care of it. Because,
Tim Holdeman didn't have an answer, I asked him too.
yeah, but I mean, I think it could be voted on by the city council, don't you?
Right, would
Well,
need
the
more
city council,
information, yeah.
I'm not sure, that's something that
Yeah.
have to probably go to Dean first, you know.
Right,
ask,
right,
you know,
but I mean,
details.
I'd love to take something off our responsibility.
Right.
Wouldn't you? I mean, if you were up here?
So, some historic knowledge, I think, in the not too distant past, I think, before both of your time, at least formally, Dean did bring that up, that the way the city related to SSAs was not prudent, that there was not the appropriate chargebacks and that type of thing. I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but I do recall that Dean made a presentation on this probably within the last 2
Yeah.
years, and that policies may have changed as a result.
Because, but just real quick,
Yep.
if we turn that back to an association, and you belong to that association, and you say, Pat, our cul-de-sacs are bad, okay? Goes back to the city, we come along, try to solve the problem through code. Doesn't, we take care of it, we charge it back to the association. That's fair, isn't it?
It
I'm
may
sorry,
not
go
be
ahead.
what's in writing, but it sounds fair to me. Congratulations, Mike, I hadn't heard of a formal appointment, but congratulations. Do we have a replacement yet with the Economic Development Commission, with Mr. Snow's departure?
I'm gonna be going on that.
All right, okay, good.
That's is that a Friday? I
Yep,
think?
Friday morning,
Friday,
good,
those are.
good. Thank you for stepping in. You were gonna be my recommendation if Mike wasn't.
Guys, I have to take off real quickly, I'm sorry. I have a question for you. And I know this is a bizarre question, so I'm good at those. The question is that when over here on Peace Road, we're Peace Road, and we develop, and we had this through the past administration, we had something about, you know, developing, making it wider, spending $4 million doing. When I come off of at 5 o'clock, when I come off of Peace Road, off of 88 onto Peace Road, a huge amount of traffic is heading to Sycamore. I mean, it's all going to, there's a lot of traffic going to Sycamore.
At least north.
Pardon me?
At
Or at
least
least
north.
north, right. Not DeKalb. And mostly, there's a great deal that's not DeKalb. Anyway, they're going through DeKalb, and it seems to me that by putting huge amounts of money into developing Peace, that we're really developing it for others. I mean, I'm wondering about your thoughts on how we can keep whatever we do, whatever $4 million we spend here locally on Peace, keep that for here, without saying, okay, hey, let's send a lot more people over to Sycamore, because it's a lot easier. I think Peace has done that already. But to send it over there to say, okay, hey, we're spending money to make it nicer for you over there, or can you then say to somebody like Sycamore and say, hey, when we make money, we put money into Peace, we'd like to have a little money from you to help us do the work here.
Good
That
luck.
would be, I know. Good luck.
I wanna see that
I know,
check.
it's not gonna happen. That's why I stopped thinking about it, but I mean, it seems to me that it's kind of a mixed bag when we put it right here, that we're really putting it right for someone else as well.
Yeah, and I don't know, do you have an answer to that?
Well, I think at the time it's built, you look at who really should own it. Is it city? Is it township? I think to your point
Right.
of
County.
county.
Yeah.
So dating back to those agreements, you know, good thing to look at, to know historically how well it worked and how well it hasn't, so that we have better information on those future agreements.
And that brings up, I'm gonna leave, sorry. We have all sorts of county property in DeKalb. For instance, Pierce's motorcycle shop. When I say, hey, guys, can we mow the lawn here on Pierce's? It looks like absolute junk. Not Pierce's now, it's gone to Breezy, I think, Breezy now. But in any event, that's county, and you can't do anything about it. I think that clearing up some county issues, all of Greenwood Acres as it moves along, to the left is all county. I mean, that it just seems stupid.
Bernanke tried doing some of that annexation.
And he didn't.
Well, no, he
Didn't
tried
do it.
as much as he could. The problem is that if you annex certain non-compliant properties, you have to give them the freedom to continue to be
Non-compliant.
non-compliant.
Doesn't seem like there's much work.
And some people just didn't want to do it. The Chronicle building comes to mind. and
Yeah, there's
others.
all sorts of really goofy anomalies throughout the town that just we migrated into that we never really
Yeah,
cleared up.
I've got a situation, I'll tell you how antiquated some spots are. I've got a situation that's in town, that there's an alley, it's been an alley for the last 60 years. It's been paved, it's been plowed, and it's not owned by the city. There's a pins that go right through that thing. And it's the last alley in town that's that way. Now, I'm going about it to try to get it in so that, you know, we try to get that alley what it should be, because, I mean, it's the right thing to do.
It's adverse possession now.
Well, I know you guys have more important things to be doing than alley, or, you know, dealing with high lawns.
Take it to the center too.
Right.
It's on their abstract.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you see the pins.
They own it. They
Right.
own it, yeah.
Yeah. You know where exactly what I'm talking about?
No, but I know cases like this.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that the one between Roosevelt and Garden off 7th?
Yeah, 6 and 7.
All weekend. Okay, thanks for
Oh,
Yeah.
we only got
Thanks,
less
guys.
than 10 minutes.
Jeff.
Yeah.
The subject of money. Now,
Got some?
as we know, no, I don't, I'm talking. Money is everything.
Right.
And when they give Anne Marie the okay that she could hire all the help she wanted, she hired 30 people. She laid off the 2 building inspectors.
3.
Highland and Dietrich quit. And they had to lay somebody off, so they had a couple $100,000 to pay social issues last budget.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, they got all the people that were here before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we used to do, 8 years ago, you could have a Freedom of Information Act, and you could call it in at 10 o'clock one morning,
Mm-hmm.
and by 10 o'clock the next morning, you got it,
Mhm.
with 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
Now they got a 50,000, or I don't know how much they spent for this dang, computer program,
50.
and it doesn't work right.
Mm-hmm.
And how many extra people have they got going through this? I understand one of the analysts, that's all he does.
Mm-hmm.
So, was Anne Marie trying, just because the police station moved, she trying to fill the building up? There's your money, you got a good 5-6 million a year you can spend on roads, and probably the same amount to buy, new vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the money goes,
Right.
and it's all being wasted.
Right.
Now, if we could operate like that, the city's actually smaller because people are leaving town, they're leaving the state, we're smart.
Well, not only that, you know, we lost like a dozen houses off the tax roll because of the sanitary district too. I mean, and now,
Yeah, right.
and we don't have, I think we got 1 permit going right now to build a house, okay?
Right, right, and
Right.
over in Sycamore, they got 30 or 40,
Right,
and
Right.
2/3 of them are people from DeKalb that are moving to Sycamore.
right. We talked about this, and because you've dealt with the city longer than I have. I mean, I would love to see the list of how many people in each department. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as we can't micromanage, but we can, well, we gotta oversee it.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, from the outside in, it doesn't look right. Now, she does not have the right to hire whoever and how many she has. She's, you know, when she hires somebody, like the hiring process right now for these 2 positions that are being filled by replacement, that's been brought to us.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you're absolutely right. We have to keep an eye on it, and we have to find out, you know, if there's anything that's being misspent,
Yeah.
somebody being misspent, an analysis or whatever. So, you got anything to say about that?
I think the key pieces of information we need as a council are things like a 5-year financial plan. And it's things like if you are more customer friendly and you provide information, there's going to be far less need for FOIAs. You know, it's these strategies that if we improve the culture of the way we do business, we'll save money along the way. We won't have to have all of the extra people to manage the FOIAs, rationalize why or why not to respond, and I think cut through some of these issues of just out and out trust is what it is what we need to improve.
Yeah, I wanna go back to the TIF annual review meeting. Pat was there, but I don't think you were, Mike. Lynn brought it up. You know, there was in a fiscal year 16 budget, $1 million was coming out from TIF for roads. And then you looked at the end report, and we spent $55,000.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it appeared that nobody in the council really understood that. And so, you know, that's what I think one area that you guys can improve, which is making sure you have complete oversight of what's going on with this budget and TIF money.
Lynn, I think when you brought that up, they shut you down, what it was about.
Well, they actually said that if that a budget amendment, which normally for the general fund, you have to do a budget amendment if you want to radically change what you're spending some money on. But in the case of the TIFs, if you end up spending the same amount at the end as you planned at the beginning, there is no such legal hurdle of an amendment. And I really do think that they took advantage of that, because that should have been discussed, that it was a matter of money for Bemis or the money that was supposedly set aside for streets. And, you know, that could be a policy decision though. That could be council saying, hey, we are going to do a budget amendment for TIF, even if we don't have to make sure we discuss these issues of the, you know, the juggling that they do, and they just don't mention it. And you know, there are a lot of things that bother me about TIF. I've got several examples. I'll give you one, and that is that in the budgets, they used to give you a beginning fund balance in, you know, the current budget, so you could see what the fund balance, the beginning and ending fund balance. And you can still see that for the general fund that's ongoing, and because they're doing so well keeping the surplus going. But in the TIF funds, they've taken that away. They used to have it, they've taken it away. I have to put in a FOIA request to find out what the ending fund balance is, so I can keep track of whether it's $6 or $7 million that got squirreled in that TIF too, which I don't know what they want to do with that. Yeah, I'm not privy to that.
So following up on
Just
that.
hang on.
Sorry.
Just to, you know, to finish this up with TIF, but, it has been pushed to the city. Like our last council meeting, and a meeting I had with Anne Marie, she goes, yeah, I know, we're. I understand, she did you before you even mentioned out of your mouth, and she did the same thing to me. So she knows that's an important issue for us, because if you notice at the last city council meeting, it was very much like, we're not doing anything until we find out where we're at with TIF.
Yes.
Okay, and by the way, let's be business friendly, let's get it to us, so we can be able to get it out there and have any money that what we could or should spend on TIF.
And, you know, I think to try to address everyone's point is our TIFs are expiring. And how do we get all of these possible projects or investments or infrastructure or workplace training and educational programs? These are all things that are available through TIF, and I think it will be key for us as a council to evaluate all of those things. I can speak for myself personally, it will be difficult to invest TIF in property that's not on the tax rolls. So at the end of the day, I think our goal with TIF is to renew blight and to improve our EAV. If we invest TIF in non-taxable property, I'm not going to buy that the visitors and the roll-off commerce as a result of this investment will pay. It needs to be a taxable property, but anyway.
You're not talking about steam.
Well, my understanding of STEAM was the idea was they would build residential upstairs. I don't know if that's gonna fly, but that's Moody's pie in the sky hope.
Well, and it's properties in foreclosure, so,
Exactly.
you know, it's what can be done in an expeditious time.
But not to beat you up too badly, but specifically on that topic of the types of job titles and what a community expectation might be. You know, to Jim's point, I agree that there are places with that outsourcing is appropriate. I'm just tired of all these studies that could have been done in-house that don't require particular expertise. But there are certain critical skills that you want longevity. I believe that it would be prudent upon the council to discuss a hiring philosophy so that you don't necessarily want to hire everybody for a long-term hire. There's incredible benefit for bringing people with energy, with different knowledge backgrounds through the organization, but after their 2 years, thanks and have a nice life. And let's, that way we avoid the pension aspects, and we bring enhanced knowledge through the organization. But I would really like scrutiny on this analysis topic. The whole level, it was something that was brought up to her during her interviewing process. She picked up on, to her credit, and she created this whole management analyst level of staffing that didn't exist before she got here. But instead of producing analysis, it's just glorified administration. So I would like your commitment that be discussed through the FAC.
I'm hopeful that a 5-year financial plan will help our council reorganize the city of DeKalb and find a way for our tax dollars to be more efficient. And again, not to micromanage, I think that's important, but from a governance standpoint, we need to look at our organizational structure, our tree, whatever you want to call it, and figure out how do we maximize our resources and engage our city manager through that practice to say, and our public to say, here are the priorities, stick with those.
With all due respect, we have some positions which are subject to union contracts, I understand that. Sure. But, you know, I would almost suggest we go to a zero-based budgeting approach to staff and say, look, you know, there are new ways of doing business that this city is so far from appreciating that where do we get the best bang for our buck with staff versus outsourcing temporarily versus permanent contracting versus a third-party contracted solution. And to what degree that can be negotiated through union contracts, I think it would be.
And that's a valid point, and I think you're going to see a different way that the council looks at the budget this year. I mean, we're very fortunate to have Mike on the city council.
Really?
He was going to give me $10 for saying that. So, no, you know, coming on the finance committee, we're very fortunate to have him on council that to help giving us some direction on this. But I think you're going to see a different approach, hopefully. More questions asked when it comes to budget time. All right, and the points that you're bringing up are very valid points, and they will be looked at.
And with all due respect, I've had this discussion with Michael before. The organizational dynamics of Mike, who was a sitting member of that committee, going back now as the liaison, I think are going to be somewhat challenging. So he's going to need the support of the rest of the council to really make.
And he's not afraid to voice his concerns, which is great.
No, I understand.
So, anyway, it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to take no more answers. No. All right. I'll take 2 more, and then we've got to get out.
I just have a comment about aesthetical appearances.
All right, I'll take a shower next time.
Oh, sorry. QC Nails has been moving into that space on the north side of Lincoln Highway for 4 years now, I think. And the paper's falling off the windows, and it looks really bad.
Mm-hmm.
The antique store, the resale shop on North 7th is gone and closed.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the window, all their signage is still there. You look
You're
at
talking about 7th in Lincoln?
Yeah.
There's a staffing company that's in there now.
No, it's behind.
No, but.
Oh, you're talking about behind the thrift store?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
not where the social. The old resale shop on Hillcrest has moved to South 4th Street.
Mm-hmm.
You drive by Hillcrest and their windows are still covered with all their signage.
Signage?
So you think they're there, but it's not there. And so when a business moves, they don't clean up after themselves.
Right. Geez, somebody in this room maybe has been discussing that signage issue. I'm not going to point any fingers, but
So I had a wonderful meeting very briefly last week with the mayor and the city manager and her community development director, and Ms. Charlton, to her credit, advised the mayor that there are only 6 problem signs currently in town. And as I responded in a subsequent email, I said, I would bet a month of her salary that we're closer to 4 dozen to 6 dozen.
well, you know, and that's where you got to reach out to your alderman. You know,
but one of the dismissals that she provided was that I was the only person in DeKalb that was even concerned about that.
They always make it sound like
We're now worried.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you what, and that's why you got to contact your councilman. If your councilman does not respond, contact another alderman,
Yes.
okay? And then stay on that. And it's not as if we jumped borders before, since we've been here for 45 days.
Already have.
Yeah.
I think that one of the points that I'll be bringing, and we're fortunate that our council and mayor are receiving our agenda items without two people or two council members necessarily needing to drive that, but a vacant building ordinance. In the sixth ward, we've got a challenge with a property called the Travel Inn. And what you have with those issues, DK, is, you know, the whole enforcement notion. Well, these vacant buildings in our city cost us money and resources to look out for, enforce long weeds or grass or whatever the case may be. So other municipalities have been very successful with these vacant building ordinances, and that's one part that I'll drive. Tried to drive it years ago, but didn't get anywhere, but I'm in a different position.
Okay, last question. It's gotta go. All right, 2 real quick. 1, 2. That's it.
This dovetails onto what Mr. Anderson said, that the money issue is the most important.
That's right.
Bill is correct, zero-based budgeting,
Right.
not a bad idea at all. And micromanaging, you know, you may have to do a little bit of that for about a year until things kind of get straightened out. And watch out for this one word that keeps on coming up through the Egyptian theater thing, through that steam thing, the word stakeholders. Who the hell are these stakeholders who keep on ingesting information into the process?
I think you're looking at the stakeholders right
Well,
here.
but that's
right.
not who's
No,
listed.
That's right.
Not according to
Right.
them, that's not
Right.
who's listed, and poor Jason
Right.
is stuck with giving you the analysis on TIF.
Right.
Watch out, because that's gonna come out, oh, this stakeholder and that stakeholder. People, they're like, they evaporated there, what stakeholder, what are they, what are
Right.
they?
Right.
So,
All right.
be careful,
All right.
as that comes to it.
1, 2. That's it. Yes.
I just wanted to thank the both of you for
Yes.
hosting
Yeah.
this and doing this. This is a first step in trying to get the community involved, and I, for one, appreciate it, and thank you very much. And I have no question, I'm done.
Oh,
And yeah, that's true. I dovetail on that. I lived in the 4th ward since South 4th Street, and we've never had a ward meeting ever. You know?
Yeah, I don't
Fourth
remember
ward,
having
ever,
one.
you
Yeah.
know.
If you're going along with that, we're gonna have more of them.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think if we piggyback with another councilman.
Yeah.
Or council person, I should say. Because as you can see, I mean, we've got two wards here. Obviously, the 4th ward is the largest out of the 2, but, this is all we've got. And we should have more, right?
So my question was, the city lawyer is on a unending contract. He used to be on an annual contract that was reviewed by city council. Is there any way we can change this with him and any other contracted positions? Because this endless renewing contract is problematic because there's no review in place for said positions. Can we do anything about this?
A very valid budget observation, and what are those priorities
Right.
as we go into budget season?
Yeah, and it only takes 2 of us to get something out.
I wanna make sure, if there's anything you remember here, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I see at council meetings where 2 aldermen talk about something, I'm like, well, let's get an item on the agenda next time. You know, usually that's a direction to city staff to put that as an upcoming item, you know?
If you guys remember in the paper, when it came that he was rehired, he can be fired in 30 days. So who cares about the contract? And whoever put that in there, how did that get in there? Was it one of you 2 guys?
No, they went on the.
Did you read what you did? No. You can fire him in 30 days, so who cares about the renewing contract? I mean, the guy's gotta go, we all know that.
Right.
But we have one thing at a time, we're not asking you to do that today.
He's busy harassing people about weeds now.
When
he's ready to fire himself,
you know? I'll tell you what, I've got my business cards here. Please take as many as you like, small. Contact us.
Yep.
Email us. Like I try to tell people when I meet them and our ward, you know, if you see something or hear something, call me, leave a message. Better yet, get an email. It's a lot easier I respond to emails a lot easier than phone calls, especially if it's during the day while I'm
got another occupation. But let us know, I mean, if you got an idea, or if you're hearing something on the street that might be coming up on an agenda or anything like that, you know, you hired us. You know, you didn't only vote, but you hired us, so, I mean, we're here for you.
Don't worry, we've got your back.
Quick question, Mike, you did a wonderful, website during the campaign.
Sure.
Will that be kept updated, or how do we communicate with what you're working on, or we hear from you what you're working on?
Do the cities.
I'm hopeful, no, that website won't continue, but I'm hopeful that, again, through Anne Marie's updates, now with our newsletter, and then council member updates, these kind of meetings, we can keep everyone more informed, but no, I
But
won't.
will you as alderman be communicating in some written form with your constituency? I mean, this meeting was fantastic.
You know, the only thing we've got going is, like I said, communication between, if we've got something important to come across, i.e. the electrical problem that, you know, with the change. Because when you got that letter, when actually half the letters went out, the other half's coming out next week or whatever. All right, that, I was confused. I didn't know if it was like a scam, because that's, you know, what
A lot of people
exactly.
thought it might have been a scam.
Right. So,
And that was a concern
right.
about Tim.
So if something like that comes about, the communication, yeah, that's why we wanted the press release, that's why we wanna put it over on the website, that's what I asked the city manager to do. Now, for communication going back and forth, I don't have a Facebook, I don't have a website, but you can get a hold of us.
But there was supposed to be a place on the city website where you were supposed to be able to do that. So-
You can, it's just an email link.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an email,
But not to,
but it's.
but in other words, it was interesting to me to look at the new FOIA archive, if you will, to see some of the other questions that people asked. And, you know, I don't want to duplicate your time to have to respond to individual emails. And people, I think, it just gives you a track record of working on things without blowing your own horns. It's not suggesting that you're trying to do, but it reassures people that you're on the job, much, you know, I know you both are, and I appreciate you're both volunteering to take on extra duties as liaisons to very important committees, so, and holding this. I
And if
mean,
you
you're
do get an
exemplary
email and don't
counsel.
have time to respond, just send an email back, hey, got your information, and look at
Yeah,
it.
that's
So, you
right,
know,
right.
the previous alderman never responded ever, you know, you couldn't even call him.
He said he did.
Yeah.
He yelled at me.
Yeah, oh, he yelled at you too, oh, yeah.
But
All
I
right.
yelled right back.
I wanna thank too, he left already, but Phil Young, board president for the Park District, did stop in. I've had a number of calls right when I was first sworn in about Larson Lake and our subdivision, where a lot of algae is growing and there's kind of an oily film on top, and Mr. Young and his staff are on it, and kinda wanted to thank him before he left, and thanks to all of you for joining us.
Yes.
Again, like Pat said, I'll be joining other council members for these types of sessions throughout the year. Certainly, I hope a few of them anyway, so.
And I also like to thank Craig Smith,
Yeah.
the township, when I made an announcement that we're going to, that gentleman right there, top left corner. He called me the next day, I mean, apparently he was watching or listening to the city council and says, hey Pat, reached out, you wanna use the township building? I thought it was a great idea. I mean, some people have a hard time having a meeting at the police department, which has got a beautiful place up on the second floor. Apparently there's some people that have problems with that. This is kind of a
Neutral.
very neutral, very neutral. But, I mean, right, and it's an award, so.
Very convenient.
Which is where I would try to hold meetings, because that's in my ward versus a private business, so we'll talk about that.
Right.
And
All right.
the metal
Thanks for
detector
coming.
here was very non-conspicuous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Forgot this, Park District guy thinking like, apply something to my lawn, you know, that they're real good, you know, so. I think we've done it before, sure. I know. Probably LBK thing too, right?
He's in.
And when have you met an architect that has not supported this?
Yeah.
He's building a they all say, oh, yeah, that one. And I keep trying to, you know,
Recycle.
You know, I just can't be sure.
I watched the real cheese. It's still thin, but it's I did not use. That's how it works. Three boys are doing well.
Oh, you're out.
No kids yet, Joe.
I'm usually not up in time. I work
I remember, I said that right, I saw.
I used to be the program director of WWD back in the mid-nineties.
And I saw their name.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not condemnation.
No, that got me thinking about
I appreciate what you do. Being vocal about things, it's so critical. When you get up and talk to people, do it more often.
Yeah, well, that's not the same, that's the same, no.
We have 7 jets.
Right.
I didn't take any pictures. Yeah, well, that was a while ago.
Oh, yeah, I'm aware of the issue. Hopefully, it's gonna be successful. I don't know.
Oh,
People are just probably, I'm worried that we're gonna get too busy, so we're having to work this week.
I see Steve Miller twice a year. Steve Miller. Me and Terry and I work together like this.
Yeah.
You can listen to it.
I still send him a couple times a year. Still in the middle. I know.